secrecy is a form of regulation. It is like public regulation in which the government tells you what you have to do. Secrecy is a form of regulation which tells you what you may know.
That was New York Democratic Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, appearing on Book TV October 21st, 1998, discussing his book, Secrecy, The American Experience. With all the current news surrounding classified documents found at the homes of former President Donald Trump, President Joe Biden, and former Vice President Mike Pence, this is a good opportunity to revisit a time when there was a flurry of discussion about excessive government secrecy, and proposals were made to reduce the number of classified documents. To tell that story, in this episode of C-SPAN's podcast, The Weekly, we focus on the efforts of Senator Moynihan a quarter century ago. First, some history about government secrecy. Here's Daniel Patrick Moynihan on the Senate floor, June 25th, 1996.
The present regime for protecting secrecy in our country was basically put in place in a very few days, weeks at most, in the aftermath of the declaration of war on Germany in 1917. The Espionage Act of 1917, still in place, and an amendment known as the Sedition Act, but really Part 3 of the Espionage Act the following year.
Senator Moynihan offered more history in this March 2nd, 1999 floor speech.
This is a time for more openness. This is a time the American people can be trusted with information which the Russian authorities already have. One of the phenomena of the culture of secrecy which had developed over the last century is that the United States government is continually keeping information from us which our adversaries or whomsoever know perfectly well. It is only we who don't. That has done a perceptible harm to American democracy. We have no idea how distant it is from the beginning of the century when Woodrow Wilson could proclaim as a condition of a peace to conclude the First World War, as we came to call it, open covenants openly arrived at. Now, mind you, that same President Wilson, to whom I devoted, in the day after he asked for a declaration of war, he sent up a series of 16 bills, including the Espionage Act, and an act to provide for prior restraint, as lawyers call it, censorship of the press. That first Henry Lodge on this floor said, as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, said, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Next day came back and said, you know, I think it's not a good idea. I don't think we should have it. The press should be free in this country. And President Wilson wrote the manager on the House side of the bills, said, please keep it, and it was not kept. But it was assumed it was kept, so much so that when the Pentagon Papers were released, the executive branch of our government just assumed that was a crime, and proceeded to try to prevent their publication, then to find out more about the person who had released them. And the next thing you know, we had an impeachment hearing in the federal government, a crisis that all grew out of secrecy and presumptions of secrecy.
With that history as a foundation, we now hear Senator Moynihan in his role as chairman of the Commission on Protecting and Reducing Government Secrecy. It was only the second commission ever to examine the way the government keeps its secrets and the way citizens have access to government information. May 7th, 1997, Senator Moynihan testified to the Senate Governmental Affairs Committee. The topic, the Commission's final report and recommendations.
If we're going to protect the secrets we need, we're going to have to reduce the number of things we declare to be secret. It is simply a matter of priorities here.
Senator Moynihan added,
we begin with a basic conception which you have described which is that secrecy is a form of government regulation.
When he testified as chairman of the Commission on Protecting and Reducing Government Secrecy, Senator Moynihan also was a former member of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence.
One of the more extraordinary experiences of the commission came early on when we had two witnesses appear who have just written a book, A Secret History of American Communism. And they had done it with a colleague in Moscow, and they're working out of the archives of the Communist Party in Moscow. And we all sort of said to us that it's, here's the book, John Earl Haynes, who is the chief archivist at Library of Congress, Harvey Clare at Emory, and Mr. Firsov in Moscow. We said, you know, it's a bit odd to have to learn your own history from archives in Moscow. I mean, those bastards lied about everything else. Why wouldn't they lie about what they put in the archives? And yet it was a brilliant piece of work, but altogether taken from these other sources.
In addition to that May 7th, 1997 hearing, 3 days earlier, Senator Moynihan held a press conference.
Secrecy is a form of government regulation. Secrecy is a form of government regulation. We have two regimes of regulation in our government now. The one is public regulation, which over the years since we began publication of the Federal Register in 1936, have developed a regime of publication, of discovery, of due process. On the other hand, we have this second and parallel regime of secrecy, for which we have no rules, or too many rules, or whatever you think. We have no law, as you will hear, and we have very little sense of how extensive this is, and very little way of assessing its cost and its impact. The point about public regulation is that it provides details about what the citizen may do. Secrecy is a form of regulation that describes what the citizen may know.
On June 13th, 1997, Senator Moynihan addressed the National Press Club about the work of the Commission on Protecting and Reducing Government Secrecy. He supplied these stats.
We now have a state in which there are 3 million civil servants or military officers who have the right to classify information. In 1995, we had 21,871 original top secret designations and another 374,244 derivative top secret designations, which means you use something from an original cable, which suggests that there's some roughly 400,000 secrets created, a top secret, the disclosure of any one of which would cause, and I quote, exceptionally grave damage to the national security, which is improbable. We have a level of classification which is sort of confidential secret, top secret, and we keep count of those very bureaucratically. We keep count. You know, bureaucracies want to count things, and we know exactly how many. What did I say? 374,244 top secret. But there's a secret about that, which is that top secret's not the top secret. There are a higher level of classification. They're classified.
So, what to do? During that National Press Club address, Senator Moynihan offered solutions and next steps.
We think that can be our future. We propose a statute. The first thing, and I'll close now, we have two ideas. One, two proposals. One is that there be a statute regulating, establishing the classification of documents. And most important of all, that the original classifier sign his or her name. So you know who said this is top secret. I said so on this date. And you can go back and say, well, why? Or you know, that's a responsibility. and you better be held accountable for it. Two, we would hope for a declassification center to get the Freedom of Information Act process really systematically organized. The ongoing agencies of government concerned with intelligence, concerned with defense, aren't going to spend much time declassifying documents 50 years old. That's not what they're there to do. It ought to be given to a center, preferably in the National Archives, whose job it is, and say, we'll do it for you. And, oh, do we have to do it?
And now a bonus clip. Senator Moynihan was a Democrat. What about Republicans in Congress? On December 7, 2016, the majority Republican House Oversight Committee held a hearing called Examining the Costs of Overclassification on Transparency and Security. Here's Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz, Republican of Utah.
Overclassification of information has become a concern. Estimates range from 50 to 90% of classified material is not properly labeled. In the 1990s, Congress established the Commission on Protecting and Reducing Government Secrecy to study those issues and develop recommendations. In 1997, the Commission issued a final report, including 16 recommendations. 3 of those recommendations were implemented, 7 were partially implemented, and 6 remain open today. The chairman of the Commission, the late Senator Patrick Moynihan, wrote, and I quote, "If the present report is to serve any large purpose, it is to introduce the public to the thought that secrecy is a mode of regulation. In truth, it is the ultimate mode, for the citizen does not even know that he or she is being regulated," end quote. Patrick Moynihan, hats off to him and his leadership in understanding and really helping to champion this effort to move forward and really examine the degree of which secrecy is needed in our nation.
Pat Moynihan served 4 terms as New York Senator. He decided not to run for re-election in 2000 and was succeeded by Hillary Clinton. In 2000, President Bill Clinton awarded Senator Moynihan the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
I was interested to learn, as Hillary said, that Senator Moynihan actually helped to create the medal he is about to receive. President Kennedy charged him with that task, and as the president decreed, the standard of achievement was set very high indeed.
3 years later, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan died. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. That's it for this episode of C-SPAN's The Weekly. Want to learn more about government classified information and secrets, both in recent weeks and years past? It's no secret you should use the C-SPAN Video Library. Our recommendation, just go to cspan.org and use the search bar on top. Thanks for listening, and happy searching.